1 year and over a dozen DM guides and gameplays later, we have finished the Dragon of Icespire Peak, and we're ready to share the very best and very worst moments of our campaign in this full campaign review right now. Hi, I'm Bob.
And I'm Grace.
And welcome to Bob World Builder, where we together learn how to have as much fun as possible playing D&D, so hit that subscribe button if you want to learn to get the most out of your D&D campaigns.
Yeah, hit it.
Now, Grace, why don't you tell us a little bit about this module?
Okay, Bob. So, Dragon of Icespire Peak is about a dragon that's hanging out on Icespire Peak. And it moving in there pushes these orcs, ushering them into the Phandalin Valley, where they kind of start to cause a little trouble in some places. And in the end, you wind up hopefully destroying What's-His-Fang.
Close enough.
Allowing the orcs to return home,
yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that is a good summary of the actual plot. It comes in the D&D Essentials Kit, which released just about a year ago. So in this past year, we've played through every quest, the playlist linked down in the description, and obviously we played it just one-on-one. So it's great for families or really just playing online with like a friend. It's a great module for that. So this module takes place all around the little Sword Coast town of Phandalin. So what do you remember from Phandalin in our campaign?
Almost nothing, because we didn't spend a lot of time there. I know there was Harbin Wester, who just kind of chilled in his house all the time because he was terrified of the dragon.
Yeah. He's the town master of Phandalin who writes all the little quest board jobs that your party can pick up. And we didn't really use Phandalin a whole lot because we obviously played these very episodically. But I highly recommend using Phandalin as a home for your party, whether the characters decide their backstory is actually rooted there, or if they just amass enough gold to like buy their own little home there as the adventure progresses, just to really enhance their drive to take care of these problems. Otherwise, it can move kind of slowly because there's a lot to do. And the first threat is a manticore in Quest 1 at Umbrage Hill. So how did we handle that?
I handled it by talking to the manticore. My instinct as a player is usually to try to talk things out. And it worked really well. We just had to go catch a deer for this manticore and it flew off.
Yeah. The module does a good job of kind of hinting to the dungeon master that your level 1 party shouldn't fight this thing, even though it is like hungry, trying to get in that windmill and eat a dabra or whatever. Be willing to let it talk it out. Intelligent creatures should always have a better motivation than just like, I want to kill the thing. Oh, and the other main tip for quest number 1, tweak Adabra's motivations a little bit so she will actually leave the windmill, because the whole quest objective is to get her to come back to Phandalin. And then it's written in there that she will just stay at her windmill, like no matter what the characters say, because it's good to let them actually get that first victory. When they're ready for their second challenge, I recommend heading to the Dwarven Excavation quest. What do you remember about this one?
I remember there being oozes, right?
Yes. And one thing that you guys did find some way around is this really deadly trap.
Oh yeah, was that when I was just like, I'm not gonna touch that?
Yeah, I think maybe you guys did just leave it, but there's a gem that explodes and it can easily do enough damage to kill a level 1 character if you go there at level 1. So be careful with that trap, either reduce its damage or find a way to really like suggest to your players that like this thing is dangerous and needs to be approached carefully. There's also like some orcs that are supposed to attack as your players are leaving that place. Their only objective is to warn the prospectors. They don't have to go in that temple at all. So if they skip the temple part, then throw in the orcs. Otherwise, don't use the orcs. Just let them fight some oozes and have a good day. Quest number 3, you go visit some wacky, silly little gnomes in a cave complex of theirs called Gnomengarde.
I remember recommending marriage counseling.
So there were 2 gnome kings. One who was kind of maddened by his recent encounter with a mimic. And you guys actually took it out pretty easily, I think.
Yeah,
because it was like a 3-on-1. But what I do recommend for that one is providing a map, because the cave complex is kind of complex. Ooh, and maybe use this place to throw in some silver weapons. More on that in a bit.
Yeah.
The next quest that I recommend your players head to is the Loggers Camp. Do you remember this one?
Did we even do this one?
Yeah. So, but this one was one of my favorites. It involved some Ankegs. I think you guys only fought one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the one with the weird boar that we found.
Oh, yeah.
And we found some dolls that we burned. It made a squealing sound.
Yes, and you felt the sensation of the other burrowed giant insects kind of like leave the area. They were basically holding hostage Harbin Wester's cowardly brother, who I totally recommend upping the cowardly nature of him just to make it a silly encounter for everybody. And for the boring encounter, as it's written, as it's called in the book, where they meet this anchorite shape change, into a boar in the woods, is to have it be kind of communing with some of the runaway pigs from Butterskull Ranch. Butterskull Ranch. This one was one of actually probably my favorite one because of one special encounter I threw in there. And before we get into that, I want to say thank you for all the overwhelming support really since last week with the announcement about my recent layoff and my goal to make this my job for at least the next few months. We kind of blew past 4,000 subscribers, doubled the Patreon community, and I'm just really excited to use this time as an opportunity to make this whole Bob World Builder project the best it can be. So thank you, and let me know down in the comments what was your favorite quest from this module and whether or not you finished it. I'd love to hear about it. Back to Butterskull Ranch. What do you remember from that?
So I remember being really confused at bodies being dragged around.
Oh yeah, we got really fixated on that.
Yeah,
I think.
Once I finally got off that, we finally got into the basement, and I was just like, "Hey, Big Al."
Yeah, and you guys ended up defeating the rest of the orcs with him. So my favorite encounter from this, and kind of the biggest tip, is to spread out the orcs all over the farm.
There was one in an outhouse.
Yeah, one in the outhouse.
Which Jug blew up, right?
He used a mace and just smashed it, and it was either a crit or just something really crazy because it was a surprise attack, and plopped him right down into the well of that outhouse. So pretty gross, really funny, and it was just one of my favorite moments from the campaign for sure. And now, Mountain's Toe Gold Mine, were-rats. How did this go for us?
I hated this whole thing. They didn't have any silvered weapons.
Yeah.
Magical weapons of any kind, which were-rats are immune to anything that's not magical or silver. So we gave up after a while and just left.
And so I either recommend just turning that immunity into resistance, either providing silvered weapons somewhere earlier in the campaign, like Gnomengarde. But the main one is kind of going back to quest number 1, giving those were-rats more of a chance to negotiate, basically. Their leader will say, oh yeah, we'll go back to our old hideout, Shrine of Savras, if you clear that out for us. But then it literally says in the thing oh, but they're just lying about it, and they won't actually do that. So even if your party goes and clears that out, then they're still going to have to come back and fight these were-rats. Definitely, this is the quest that needs the most changes by far. And while we're talking about Shrine of Savras a little bit, what do you remember from that?
I remember the bell. I also remember really easily defeating some trolls. Giants? Ogres.
Yeah, so we really tweaked this one too because our party ended up allying with the half-orcs. So they fought a bunch of were-rats here really easily this time. Still kept some ogres there. That ended up turning into a funny situation.
There's a lot of jumping in this one.
Yeah.
It's later when we were getting the bell, Clodagh rolled really high athletics to get on top of the roof, so she just jumped.
Yeah, getting the bell can kind of be tricky. So I also included them kind of seeing that the bell was the hidden treasure in the really awesome vision.
Well, Clodagh thought she did die when she was having the vision.
Because I described it as this out-of-body experience. Stole that from Sly Flourish, watch his videos. And the other thing here, just to have there be lots of holes where the were-rats had been searching for this treasure that they wanted out of the location. Now, much like Mountain's Toe, another quest with lots of useless rooms is the giant Axeholm dungeon.
That's where the
a lot of
banshee
ghouls.
was.
Right. So that banshee's wail, super dangerous, but it drops them to 0 hit points. They're unconscious. I think they would all just be rolling death saving throws.
I think you let them stabilize, but I think they would be rolling death saves.
So technically it could have ended our campaign right there. So the Banshee doesn't have a whole lot to do with that mission. You could scrap it all together, but it's a good place just to have a more classic dungeon crawl where you're killing a bunch of ghouls. Definitely use a tip that I just forgot to mention for Shrine of Savras, where you have like one boss ghoul. But there's a neat throne room in Axeholm that you can place them in. Give them like a +1 weapon or something. Too.
Make it a gas and give it the stench too.
Yeah, make it smell really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of cool weapons, another quest that involves one of these is the Dragon's Barrow.
Yeah. We avoided a lot of traps in that one, didn't we? Because
Yeah.
we just kind of went straight to where the sword was.
Yeah, it's a really strange layout, to be honest. I recommend entering in the tail instead of in the center, and then having to progress to the head where the sword is. It's basically just a bunch of traps, which makes it a pretty unique quest for this module. The other thing for this quest is our battle with the invisible stalker ended up taking so long because it's just a fight where everybody has disadvantage basically the whole time. So it's just a lot of missing, and you don't even really know if you miss because you're attacking a thing that's just made of air anyway.
If you want an invisible creature that can do some cool stuff, you could replace it with a poltergeist. It's a variant of the ghost, and it can throw people around, which is pretty neat.
That's way more fun.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent tip. All right, and our next quest, the Woodland Manse, or the highlights of our Woodland Manse adventure.
We found the voodoo dolls of ourselves.
Yes, really good job on that one, Chris Perkins.
Yeah.
I did add that when each double was killed, the actual character took 2 psychic damage or something, and the doubles all attacked, their own character, basically.
Kill your doubles.
Yeah. But our quest was very different from the normal one because it ended up becoming this battle royale between a bunch of orcs and the party, and we lost one of our sidekicks in that battle, and Verna.
Rip and Verna.
Yeah, but it ended with you.
Me crit throwing a sword.
the Dragon Slayer greatsword.
Yeah.
It definitely one of the epic moments of our campaign for sure. Always throw your sword. And the Tower of Storms, where one super radicalized anchorite of Talos lives there in a kind of weird undead state. What else do you recall from this one?
I remember the little crab.
Okay. Yeah.
With the hat. I also remember being really frustrated at this flying man. Clodagh was like, "We're not gonna fight till you put your feet on the ground," and then shut the door. And then he thunder waved the door back open, and I almost got blown over the stairwell.
Yeah.
But then we killed him super easily, so.
Yeah, he was pretty weak at that point, but I gave him the Charm of the Storm, which is a neat feature the party or a player can temporarily gain at this location, and making him fly was just kind of another cool bonus feature there. And, oh yeah, Circle of Thunder with the giant boar Gorthok.
Oh yeah, Skippy the Wonder Boar. I was about to mention that. So we kind of just beat him up.
Beat him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Circle of Thunder isn't too bad. One strange feature about it is that the actual circle, the henge itself, has too small of gaps for Gorthok to actually fit out of.
Yeah.
Technically he's trapped in there, which is silly. Definitely give him powerful enough movement. Don't even make it a separate thing, just movement that he could bust down the stones or something. Yeah, it ended up not being too challenging, but it has the potential to be a much cooler boss fight even than Cryovane. On that note, let's talk about Icespire Hold, the final location. What did you think of that?
It was normal. We just kind of walked in. There were some thieves there. Just kind of snuck up to the top. Noticed the floor was icy, so walked carefully and just cut his head off.
Yeah, pretty
like
much.
You do.
Point is, either have Cryovane be awake or give it enough hit points to survive at least like a round and a half. Otherwise, it ends up being pretty anticlimactic.
Yeah. Keep building.
No, not yet. No.
Keep building.
No, they'll click away. Stop. Okay. Shout out to Dice Dre, Bradford Napier, Lysa Borley, David Anderson, Ed Robinson, Nice Incredible, Caleb Smith, Jerry, Tim, and MF Mage for joining Patreon this week. Thank you all for your support, and keep building.
Keep building. I'm Grace World Builder.